Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Maverick Mastery. This week we'll be taking up questions on critical reasoning. This week especially I've taken up questions based on flawed reasoning. Let's get to it. There will be 5 questions that I practice and there will be 5 questions that I give you for practice, the answers to which will be present in the description box below. First question. Clearly, the celebrity opinions should not be given so much importance when it comes to matters of national interest. What possible insight can a person whose only professional accomplishment has been the tag of the best dancer in party songs add to an issue related to national tax refund? A gym-built superstar who has admitted to using performance-enhancing substances in the past recently hogged the limelight, encouraging the youth to exercise regularly. Clearly, the irony of the situation can't be lost on anyone. Okay. So, the author is making the argument that people who are experts in one field should not be taken seriously when it comes to discussion on commenting on other fields. And what you're doing in your personal life should be held as a benchmark for whatever you say in the public domain. Okay. In making the main claim in the above passage, the speaker has made the most serious logical mistake of. First, ignoring the fact that even celebrities have the right to free speech. Nobody is saying that they cannot make statements. They are simply making the claim that their claim should not be given as much value. So their right to free speech has not been under attack at all. Option B, not considering the reach of celebrities in influencing public opinion. Between A and B, I'd say B is not a flaw. Sorry, B is a flaw, or at least the fact that these celebrities who have massive pool, who have massive reach, if they end up prescribing something good, it can have long-lasting positive impact on the population. That has not been accounted for. I wouldn't call it a mistake, but at least it is not something that is part of the reason. Downplaying the power of collective judgment in supporting the just opinion. Absolutely immaterial. Collective judgment would talk of masses aligning in some idea. Here an individual's opinion is being talked of. So this is not it. B still survives. Option D. Reducing the worthiness of one's public action from the correctness of his or her personal behavior. And this is an extremely important logical mistake that is being made in the assertion above. See, when you go to a doctor, the doctor will tell you if you smoke cigarettes, you will get cancer, or if you don't take care of your weight, it could lead to illnesses in your life. That does not necessarily mean that the doctor himself does not smoke or the doctor himself is very conscious about the stuff that he's eating. Worthiness of one's public action, the action of talking about something or whatever, is not, worthiness of that public action is not dependent on how this person leads his personal life. If the statement by itself is sensible, it is sensible. So, between B and D, logical mistake would be D. B is something that has not been considered at all. D is a mistake that has happened in framing the argument. Failing to consider the fact that people are normally intelligent enough to accept the opinion that helps them the most. This is essentially saying that people live in echo chambers, live in bubbles, where whatever they believe in, they will hear and they will agree with it anyway. So this has nothing to do with the argument in front of us. The correct answer to this question will be option D. The second question. The web is a powerful tool. It makes virtually unlimited amounts of information available. So now, someone sitting at a coffee shop in Chicago can read about the internal affairs of China. Amazing, isn't it? Second person says, what's the point of it though? Can that coffee drinker in Chicago restore human rights in a dictatorship? A lot of information is actually useless. While responding to S, T makes the most serious error of. Okay. Again, we are looking for the flaw in the reasoning. Misinterpreting the key term of the argument. The key term of the argument was information availability. And S made the argument about information availability, how it is wondrous, how it is exciting that we have so much information available. T has gone on to expand that to top of, but information by itself is useless. It doesn't really matter that much because the information does not lead to any reasonable action that might cause positive impact. So, misinterpreting the key term of the argument, okay, using the logical fallacy of two key or U2, of course, not between A and B, A survives. Using circular logic means that if circular logic is you start off with assuming something to be true and then you use whatever inferences and logics that you have and then come to the conclusion, oh, because of this, my initial hypothesis that I take it has to be true. It's like if I take an equilateral triangle, if I assume a triangle that I have taken to be equilateral, and all three angles will now be 60 degree. And then say, see, because all three angles are 60 degree, this conclusively proves that this triangle is equilateral. That is circular logic. But then this is not accurate because the 60 degree came because I assumed it to be an equilateral triangle. And then if I go on to say it is equilateral because all three angles are equal, then that is circular logic and that is of law. Of course, that is not being used here. This also goes away. Option D, appealing to pathos rather than appealing to ethos. Pathos means appealing to emotion rather than appealing to logic. That is why the argument or the statement made by D is erroneous. There is no pathos being appealed to. There is no emotional appeal happening in these statements. This also does not go. Stretching the scope of the argument. Between A and E survives because S was only limiting his statement with regards to availability of information. T has extended it to talk of what that information can potentially achieve because it cannot achieve significant amounts. This information availability is useless. But the argument made by S was not because of information availability, so much can be achieved. The argument was simply, it is so wondrous that so much information is available, and it is very much still in scope. P has extended the scope of the argument, and thereby that is the most serious error that he has made. The correct answer to this question should be option E. Next, there is no way out of this pandemic. Look at all the predictions made about its supposed end date in the past 24 months. Even the most renowned astrologer of the nation made the now disproven prediction that the pandemic wouldn't last beyond May 2021. We are doomed. The above argument is logically flawed because it bases a general claim on a few exceptional instances. Few exceptional instances have not been talked of. There was just one issue that was being talked of. When will COVID end? The pandemic, of course, being referenced here is being COVID. When will COVID end? And people had made predictions about its end at several times. And that's it. There aren't exceptional instances, as in five, let's say, exceptional instances would be. If I make the statement in a cricket match, if a batsman scores a century, his team is more likely to win than lose. But then if somebody picks up only three examples, only three matches in which the century hitter ended up on the losing team, that does not mean that the claim in itself is bad. By simply looking at the exceptions rather than the entire population of data that is available in front of us, this is not the problem or the logical flaw in the argument being made. It assumes what it seeks to establish. This is another way of saying using circular logic. Of course, this is also not valid. It is directed against the proponent of the claim rather than the claim itself. So when you end up, let's say, if I make an argument that, very much like the first question, doctor who smokes tells you, please stop smoking because it will cause cancer. You say, you can't tell me to stop smoking because you yourself smoke. The appeal was you should stop smoking because it causes cancer. You cannot turn that around by saying that, as in, the claim about smoking causing cancer still holds even if the doctor himself is a smoker. Okay. Next, it applies the appeal to authority without noticing the dubious nature of the same. And this is precisely the flaw that is happening here. Understand, we're talking of a pandemic. So somebody who is a health policy expert, somebody who has some sort of medical background, that person's statement versus an astrologer who is not even an expert in the domain, that person's statement has absolutely no bearing on whether the predictions are accurate or inaccurate. So by claiming even the astrologer cannot predict is almost as if saying the astrologer has 100% let's say prediction rate. Everything he has said has turned out to be true. That is not the nature at all. This is not an expert in the domain of public health policy. He is more about making generalized observations about future. So it appeals to authority without noticing the dubious nature of the same is a logical flaw here. It presumes without justification that what is true of a whole must also be true of its fundamental parts. Okay. So again, I will go back to the cricket example. In most matches, if a batsman from a team scores a century, his team ends up winning the match. That does not necessarily mean in every match that happens. Just because you hit a century, you have now guaranteed a victory for your team. That is not necessarily true. It is simply in most matches that happens. So this is the argument being presented in E, but then of course this is not a logical flaw that was given earlier. It is more, why are you even looking at the astrologer's prediction? Look at the people in the know, people who are aware of public health policy. They would be better informed and better placed to give opinions about what works and what doesn't, and when should the pandemic end. Okay, next. During the earthquake last year, a lot of people lost their valuable items. The government initiated a scheme whereby people can claim reimbursement for the loss of valuable goods. These were divided into two categories. Valuable goods were divided into two categories, perishable and durable. A lot of claims regarding the loss of perishable items were found to be fraudulent as the claimants were unable to provide any proof of purchase. It is thus only reasonable to assume that people made wrong claims about the durable items too. So, let's say the error that is happening here, hopefully you can understand. You go to a school and you find out of 100 kids who are appearing in an exam, 50 were cheating. So you go on to another school and you expect 50% of the population to be cheating there as well. That is inaccurate. That is the error in the argument we made. Something that is true for one space need not necessarily be replicated in some other space. So let's see, the above argument does which of the following? It attempts to draw a conclusion on the basis of irreconcilable presuppositions. There is no irreconcilable presuppositions involved in the storyline at all. A lot of it is data. It is only in the last statement that you are drawing an analogy from X to Y. From X, if something is happening in X, it should also be happening in Y. There is no presupposition at all. It bases a conclusion solely on the authority of one claimant without seeking further proof. Again, a lot of claims were found fraudulent. It's not like only one person committed fraud in making that claim. So only one claimant, the issue of it only being limited to one claimant has not been brought up, should not be accurate. It attempts to influence public opinion by trying to persuade the readers with an emotional appeal. There is no emotional appeal involved in this argument at all. It has nothing to do with the question. It infers information about the typical frequency of an everyday phenomenon on the basis of a large number of disjointed instances. Okay. From a lot of individual data points, it is trying to come up with a general outcome. That is also not true. One very specific issue has been talked of: reimbursement of loss of valuable items due to earthquakes. For perishable items, a lot of fraudulent claims were made. So, because a lot of fraudulent claims were made for perishable items, for durable goods also, there must be fraudulent claims. This is the argument. So, disjointed instances would come when there are multiple separate storylines which are now being congregated, which are now being assimilated to come up with a general opinion. That is not happening in the argument. Last one, it uses an instance where direct evidence is available to draw a conclusion about an analogous case where such evidence is unavailable. And this is the precise state of thing that is happening. We have information, or we have knowledge that fraudulent claims were made for perishable items, and we are now using that information to draw a conclusion about most likely in durable items also there would be fraudulent claims. So E is what is happening in the argument here. Last question for me. Social activist. The concept of fair and just society is a utopian fantasy. Almost every country is ruled in reality by a group of oligarchs. There is no democracy in the truest sense. These people seek to protect their own interest at any cost. It is foolish to expect these people to promote the value of egalitarianism, equality of opportunity, equality of value of life, equality of, let's say, dignity of life, along with equality of opportunity is egalitarianism. Okay. The reasoning in social activist argument is flawed because first, it ignores the possibility of existence of fair and just society amidst oligarchy. Okay. Now, see, the argument is fair and just society is a utopian fantasy. Utopian fantasy is, utopia is a perfect world where everything is fair, where everything is just, where everything is, as in, for the lack of a better term in Hindi, we call it Ram Raj, where everything is done very, very nicely. But then it goes into almost every country is being ruled by an oligarchy. First, we're saying free and fair society, fair and just society is not possible. And then we're saying the form of governance or the form of the power is with a few individuals. Oligarchy is where few individuals decide the policy and activity of the government. Because it is an oligarchy, you cannot have a fair and just society. Which is to say, within an oligarchy, it is impossible to have a fair and just society. Which is not necessarily true. This is a separate issue. This is a separate issue. Maybe within oligarchy also, there is a possibility that these oligarchs are nice people. These oligarchs are valuing fair and just society and come up with policies and rules and regulations that promote a fair and just society. So the fact that he's saying just because there are oligarchs, you can never have a fair and just society, that ignores the possibility of the existence of a fair and just society amidst oligarchy. Yes, this is a flaw. It equates hearsay with statistically plausible evidence. Hearsay is when you don't have data to back it up, but somebody somewhere said that this is true. So we are saying I have data and I have a third-hand account of somebody's experience. And we say when we have both these data points, we don't really have both these data points. Hearsay is not equivalent to statistically plausible evidence. And more importantly, for this statement here, there is no statistically plausible evidence provided in this statement at all. There is no hearsay provided in this statement at all. All of it is the social activist's opinion. So this is definitely not a flaw that is happening. Option C. It fails to consider that even the most self-centered oligarch believes in the power of fairness and justice. Okay. This talks of the possibility. It fails to consider that even the most self-centered oligarch. See, this is making a claim that even the most self-centered oligarch believes in the power of fairness and justice. We have no evidence or argument supporting this idea. Additionally, Can you see the inherent contradiction here? Self-centered oligarch believes in the power of fairness. Of course, the statement in itself is contradictory in nature. And even if one oligarch, let's say the most self-centered oligarch, believes in the power of fairness, that does not necessarily mean that the other people who are present in the oligarchy would align with that idea. So this is not a argument, or this is not even remotely related to what was being tested here or what was being presented here by the social activist. It deduces a generalized conclusion based on anecdotal evidence. Now, on one hand, you have statistical evidence where you have lots of data points, and then you have anecdotal evidence. So let's say if I want to say that poverty rates in India have gone down, and I back it up with per capita income availability and employment numbers going up, this would be statistical evidence backing up the statement poverty is going down. Versus me making the claim, now I used to go to a temple every day. Near the temple, there were 100 beggars on an average sitting outside the temple who used to seek alms from the visitors to the temple. Recently, I've seen their numbers have trimmed down. From 100, it has come down to 60. So I think poverty in India is going down. This would be anecdotal evidence. Maybe something has happened there. Maybe something has happened in and around the temple. People have sorted out their lives, or some of them have gone back home or have died. Anything might have happened. But you cannot say, based on this anecdotal evidence, one particular instance, I am able to make a generalization for the entire nation. Again, this is not something that the social activist is doing. He's not picking up an individual instance and making generalized claims about them. So this is not valid. Last, it confuses the conditions necessary for egalitarianism with the conditions sufficient for a fair and just society. Okay. See, egalitarianism and fair and just society are pretty much the same thing. It is not different. The argument here, or the option here, talks of it confuses the conditions necessary for egalitarianism with conditions sufficient for egalitarianism. It confuses necessary conditions with sufficient conditions. And that is not happening. What is happening here is, see, even if we had a perfect democracy, even if there weren't any oligarchs, so, and there was a perfect democracy, does that mean we will end up with a fair and just society? Maybe, maybe not. But the argument here is not that as soon as we have a democracy, which is democracy in the truest sense, we will end up with a fair and just society. It is one of the fulfilling criteria. It is one of the basic criteria that needs to be fulfilled in order to get to a fair and just society. The argument is not as soon as we have democracy, we will have a fair and just society. And therefore, there was no confusion with regards to whether it is a necessary condition or a sufficient condition at all. The biggest challenge here is we cannot have a fair and just society ever because we have oligarchy. These two are unrelated ideas. Even within oligarchy, there is a possibility that we can have a fair and just society if the oligarchs are so inclined. So, the correct choice here has to be option A, and that is the end of the 5 questions that I am supposed to solve. Now, I will display the 5 questions that you are expected to practice. Let's go through them. First question. Second question. Third question. Fourth question. And the last question. I hope this video helped and you learned something. That will be all for this video.